Welcome to Delmar TV. Tonight we have Dr. Mark White, who has been very consistent with us in sharing a very good information on a weekly basis. Dr. Mark, welcome to Delmar TV.
Good evening, and it's really good to see you and to be here and to to talk about this pandemic and how it affects our communities.
Dr. Mark White, now that the attention has curved away from testing and more emphasis has been put on vaccination, how did the vaccination change and how we will be living going forward?
Well, um, that's a very good question, and I think that's something that we all need to understand. Um, because I think the push is that we should be vaccinated. I definitely agree 100% that our community definitely as we can look back on this pandemic right in the middle of it, you had more people of color dying and being hospitalized than anyone else. I mean, we represented a significant amount of the people that got hit the hardest with this. Um, I think that with the vaccine, I think that we one of the missing pieces with the vaccine is how long does the immunity from getting vaccinated last? How long will you be um, uh, protected from the virus? And there's a few things that we got to take into consideration when we think about being vaccinated, and that is uh, whenever your body is infected or there's a foreign a substance that comes into the body, and a bacteria, a virus, uh, um, your immune system will automatically do. There's four things that I tell people, patients, and try to educate people about. There's four things that your body's automatically are going to do. Your immune system is going to immediately kick in and make antibodies. It's going to try to make antibodies to kill the foreign infection. In this case, we're talking about SARS, to COVID, COVID virus, coronavirus. And so immediately you'll get this response from your immune system where you have these antibodies that are out to destroy the virus. But there's some other cells involved in this immune response. And you have what's called T helper cells, which will help to recognize if you become reinfected with the virus. And there's also these another a group of cells called T killer cells, and they seek out to destroy the virus. And the fourth a line of cells of defense are the B memory cells. B memory cells, and these cells will recognize if you get reinfected with SARS or COVID-19, and it will produce antibodies against against the virus. So your body, once it's infected, it will do a host of things to protect you from reinfection. Um, uh, uh, how now? Here's the missing here's the missing piece. Well, first of all, I want to say that um, that we are not getting vaccinated like we need to. Um, the last I checked, and this was probably about 4 or 5 days ago, if you look at the percentage of of white Americans that have been vaccinated, it's about 65%. That I know that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And there have been a lot of people that have been vaccinated. Um, when you look at how many people of color, um, and when you look at the number, when you look at the articles and read the articles, you know, they say minorities or people of color, it comes out to be about 5%, and not
Let me
not
ask you something about the comparing those numbers. It is unfortunate. Is it because there's a lack of access, or is because there's a fear associated with the vaccine?
I think I think that it's a combination of both. Initially, I, initially when the vaccine first was available, it was really tough to get a vaccine. It was tough to get vaccinated. They had and they're still going the 1A and the 1B and the 1C, and 88, 75, 70-year olds, and so you had to be right on top of that. You had to understand how the system was going to work with the when when you were up to bat in terms of getting vaccinated, and you also had to understand how it worked. So if they said, okay, we're going to do 60-year-olds, and you were 64, but you didn't understand that you had to call this number, and this is the time that you had to call it. Or in a lot of cases, you had to have a computer, and had you had to sign up on the computer. So that means that you had to have an internet, you had to have a computer, you had to kind of, you know, be computer literate to a certain degree. I mean, and when you talk about people that are 70, 75, 80-year old, I mean, that's a, they're, they don't know. They just don't know. Um, uh, and so that knocks out a lot of us. Um, because we're just not technologically savvy enough. And not that it takes a lot of sophistication to do that, but when you're talking about somebody that's over 70, 75, that's not really in the, out there, um, they just are not going to be able to put that together. And then, and then if you take into consideration, a lot of people don't have internet. They don't have internet at their home. Um, they may not have a computer in their home, and so that coupled with the fear of this vaccine, people just weren't doing it, aren't doing it, and so I think um, we have to get ourselves vaccinated. I think it's still a priority for us to do it.
Let's
Um,
let's come back to the manufacturers of the vaccine. Is there a really big difference between Johnson and Johnson and the other two, such as Pfizer and Moderna?
Good question. There, there are two different types of vaccines. One is a messenger RNA vaccine, and one is a DNA. Without getting into real, uh, you know, uh, uh, deep details of those vaccines, um, the Pfizer and Moderna is a very you could think of it as a really high tech vaccine. um, uh, they were able to put that vaccine together quickly because of the technology and the technology that's involved in making a messenger RNA vaccine versus uh, Johnson and Johnson, which is a DNA, which is this kind of standard vaccine um, that we have, like just like with the flu vaccine. But let's talk about the differences between the two of the vaccines. Um, and with Johnson and Johnson, what their endpoint, what they were trying to accomplish with their vaccine was two things. They were trying to keep people from dying, okay? So they were trying to decrease the death rate if a person was infected. And secondly, they were trying to decrease the hospitalization rate. Those were their endpoints with the vaccine. Pfizer and Moderna's endpoints were to keep a person from being infected uh, and having the illness. You know, you can be infected with tuberculosis and not be ill. Uh, and I don't want to get this complicated, but Moderna and Pfizer's endpoint was we don't want we don't want this person to even get infected with the virus at all. Johnson and Johnson, their endpoint was we don't want people dying, we don't want people going to the hospital. So while um, so from that standpoint, that's good, that's great. Um, However, does that stop you from having a mild illness with the Johnson and Johnson? Um, well, you could still develop a very mild illness with the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, because that wasn't their endpoint. Their endpoint was to keep people from dying and keep people out of the hospital, which I believe is really important. Yeah, so those are two different objectives with the vaccines, and both um, would contribute to getting some control over this pandemic. Both would. I mean, if people aren't dying and people aren't going to the hospital, then you have some control.
How long will the protection from the vaccine will last? Will that be years, or that will be the shorter
Yeah,
time?
that is that they don't know to get um to be 100% honest. And I've read a lot of articles and different papers on this. They really don't know. Now people that have been infected with the virus, people that were infected and got sick, and they are, they've done some studies. And I one of the studies, recent papers I read, was they're thinking that you're covered for about 7 months, 7 to 8 months. Uh, so they can say with some real um, accuracy about 7 to 8 months. Initially, they had said 3 months. If you got infected, you were good. You would be good for 3 months.
Which
And
means that maybe we will need to get vaccinated every year or every 7 months.
I think that we are going to have to get vaccinated every year. At once we get a real good grip on this, definitely. So I believe that once we do get things a better grip of more control over everything, I think for sure I think this is going to be one of those viruses that will, like the influenza virus, we have to get, that flu vaccine once a year. I believe that after, we really get things under control, this will be one of those viruses that they'll say, you need to get, the COVID-19 virus. But that, but the one thing that I want to keep, we got to keep in mind is that um, we're doing a lot better, but until the whole world does a lot better, we're all kind of at risk with the variants and the mutations.
By when do you think we can say we reached, is it herd vaccination?
Herd immunity.
Right,
Yeah,
herd immunity vaccination.
I would say that, and I mean, I'm not a virologist and I'm not an expert at this, but just reading and listening to the experts, I would say that by I would say by the end of the year, I think we'll be at a place where we'll be, it'll be safe to say that, it'll be kind of time we can take the mask off, um, and but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking we still got to get by these different mutations that pop up. I mean, because Pfizer and Moderna, the cool thing about the messenger RNA vaccine is that you can take a section out of that messenger RNA and just replace it
Right.
with another code, and then you can do a booster for the person, and you're back. Should we get a real um, uh, deadly mutation or variant that pops up in us, Brazil, or you know, and if they, that would be the case.
One point that I really want to go back, that's kind of troublism, is that you mentioned some communities or some demographics, 65% of them have obtained or got this vaccine, and less than 5% of either
Yeah,
African American or any other minorities, specifically the Somalis, get vaccinated. Now,
yeah,
what would you, how would you approach someone who has, there's all kind of conspiracy theories that's out there. What would you
yeah.
say to those kind of individual?
Yeah, I talk to patients, of course, talk to patients every day, and I think that they one of the things I think we need to do are are having these kind of conversations, and I think that they need to see. Um, I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and we were saying what people really need to see is they need to see African American, African people of color, uh, medical people on a commercial having a conversation with um, the people, lay people, non-medical people that may have questions and may have fear about the vaccine, and listen to how we talk about it. As medical professions, we understand what the messenger RNA and the DNA and the herd immunity, and why people have side effects, and they need to hear that. They need to see that conversation, because all remember, at one point along at one point along the line, people were not going to take the vaccine. You had these anti-vaccine groups out there, and you still do have some. But as far as people of color, we really need to see and hear our uh, people of color providers, and interacting with the community. We need to see that we're I think that we're a people of we hands on. we we'd like to see we want to
Visualizing, yeah.
yeah and visualize that thing. And so because when people talk to me and I draw pictures and break it down and talk to them about it and show them where I got the vaccine and talk about my mother and my family and everybody's gotten vaccinated, nobody's had anything weird happen, they get more comfortable. So they say, so you really think I need to take it? I say absolutely. And then I talk to them about what happens if you don't. I mean, it's not, um, we know what they said. We know what they say happens if you do take it, but what happens if you don't? And so we know. I can tell you what happens if you don't take it, and you're out there and you end up getting infected with this unusual variant,
Uh-huh.
that comes up. And that's not to say the people that have been vaccinated and you get a unusual variant that pops up, you- even though we've been vaccinated, that doesn't mean invincible against any form. But at least we have, if you go back to the memory cells and the T helper cells, at least we have some immunity, and um, and we can have some defense against against the virus. So I think that we have to really put that needs to be a big push in our community.
As always, Dr. White, we greatly do appreciate your time for your great contribution for weekly basis. We will see you hopefully next Monday.
Absolutely, looking
Thank you.
forward to it.
All
Have a
right,
good.
viewers, that will be our show tonight. Until next time, thank you.
All right.